I'm Effie and this is What Effie Reads.
I was lost but you helped me find my way, tainted by a desire, 'cause I was scared to face the truth. You pulled me out from my anxiety.
Today I'm going to be chatting about my worst and most disappointing reads of 2021. If you've seen my best books video, you'll see that I didn't include all of the very best books in that video, and the same is true for this one but in the reverse. So I haven't included every single one of my worst books, but I've picked out a few of the ones that really stood out to me. And again, I've just picked out the ones that stood out as really disappointing. Thankfully, a lot of these disappointing reads I don't own physically, so it'll be a lot of pictures on screen. Also, I have a terrible memory, so I apologise if I've completely forgotten author names, but again, I will put the covers on screen. So I will start by talking about the most disappointing reads, and then I will get into my worst books of 2021. As I'm sure you don't need me to tell you, but these are completely my opinions, and if you disagree, then that's fair enough. I think there's one book on this list that I will personally judge you if you say you like the book, because the content is objectively bad. But other than that, everyone's got different reading tastes. Everyone is a different person, and that's what makes things interesting. And actually, I'd love for you to come into my comments and tell me what you loved about these books, because I think it can be a bit difficult to see the other side, and I do like seeing the other side. So without further ado, let's get into the most disappointing books. Now, top of this list, without a doubt, is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This book is so hyped and people love it so ardently, and I just did not enjoy it. I was so excited to read this. I'd heard fantastic things about it, and in the end I thought it was really trite. I also didn't think it was a particularly unique concept. The idea is that a woman tries to unalive herself, as the TikTokers say, and she then ends up in a sort of purgatory library situation where she gets to go and live all her different lives that she could have had. And then, I mean, if you're familiar with the concept, you probably know what happens from there. But I just didn't like it, and it actually negatively impacted my mental health. So very much not the book for me. The next book that I found really disappointing was Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. This is a really difficult one because it raises some really important points, and I definitely think there needs to be more discussion around the bias that exists and the way that testing's done that sees things like menstruation as causing confounding variables in things like medicines, where a good proportion of populations do menstruate. So obviously it's a book that needs to be written, it's a book that needs these discussions to occur. But unfortunately, it's really trans exclusionary, to the point that the language that's used is the kind that you would expect as inclusionary language, but actually is used in a very derogatory fashion. So at one point, the author is referring to men, and she means men. But rather than saying men, she refers to them as people with a penis or has a penis. And that completely erases the fact that not all men have penises and not all people with penises are men. And it was little things like that. And then you've got the fact that the gender binary isn't something that is binary everywhere. So that's really frustrating as well, especially when you're talking about global data. And then there's things as well, like you completely ignore the existence of people who are intersex. And overall, I just had a very creeping feeling about it. It didn't feel quite right as I was listening to it. And then upon researching after listening to this book, just thinking things felt a little bit off, I did discover that this author is in fact a TERF. Now, as I say, this book is having conversations that need to be had. Just unfortunately, these conversations need to be had by someone who isn't a TERF. As much as it's a different book, it's approaching different things, I will always recommend Amanda Montell to people who are looking for a book that is inclusionary. So if you're looking for a feminist book, I highly recommend you check out Word Slut by Amanda Montell. It is very, very inclusionary, and I highly recommend that author. The next book on my list of disappointing books is Growing Things and Other Stories by Paul Tremblay. I read A Head Full of Ghosts earlier this year and thoroughly enjoyed it. And part of A Head Full of Ghosts is this story called Growing Things, and it's really creepy. And then I discovered, I was randomly on Storygraph for some reason, and I saw that this book exists. And obviously, being called Growing Things, I was really excited to pick it up. And it also talks about having links to some of Tremblay's other works. So again, very excited to pick it up. When I did eventually read it was just really weird. And it suffered very much from what I struggle with short stories, is that you're often given no context, no background, and it can be very difficult to find your feet in the story. I did rate this book a 3, but overall it didn't do as much as I was hoping it would do. It is very much in the category of weird horror, but I think that, at least in the case of this book, Paul Tremblay's strengths do not lie in short stories. The next book to make my disappointing books list is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I hate to say it, but it's just bad. I think part of that is going to be the audiobook narrator. I'm usually a massive advocate for audiobooks, but the narrator for The Raven Boys is absolutely dreadful. But I think the biggest disappointment with this book is that the way everyone pitches this book is the idea that if this girl kisses her true love, they will die. And that is basically nothing to do with the story, at least in The Raven Boys. And quite frankly, I'm not prepared to trudge through another 3 books just to get the story that I was promised. I think if this book had been blurbed more accurately, perhaps I would have got more enjoyment out of it. But I also think this is a book that, at the time that it came out, possibly would have been a lot more enjoyable. But reading it in 2021 with so many other great YA in existence, this just isn't an exceptional book. The next book to make my list of disappointing books is How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie. This book was extra disappointing because I saw it in Waterstones and I saw this beautiful edition in Waterstones and I was like, no, I'm going to listen to it on script before I buy it and see if I like it. And I started listening to it on script and I absolutely adored it. So when Waterstones had the end of 2021 sale, I was like, right, I will buy it. I know I like it. And then I got to the end. And that ending completely tanked the book for me. This book has fat phobia and a generally unlikable protag. So as I was reading it, it was kind of a 4.75 for me. And then by the time I got to the end, it ended up being a 3.5. And even that was being generous because I enjoyed the meat of the book so much that I think I rated it higher than possibly it deserves. The concept's really interesting. Essentially, you've got this serial killer who has killed multiple people and ends up in prison for a murder that she hasn't committed. And through the story, she's telling you how she went about killing these people. And then that ending makes me so mad. Up next, we've got The Sleeper and the Spindle by Neil Gaiman and Chris Riddell. And very mild spoilers, so skip away to when I'm not holding up this book if you don't want to know anything about it. But essentially, I thought I was getting a queer Sleeping Beauty retelling, and what I got was a straight Sleeping Beauty retelling. There is definitely some changes to the story of Sleeping Beauty, but the story that this picture gives you is not the story that you get. This picture feels very queerbaity because these two characters do not end up together. This character possibly could be queer, but yeah, just disappointingly not queer enough for me, which I don't know, it's a really difficult one because people will be like, oh well, you shouldn't rate a book down just because it's not queer, and I'm like, yes, but look at the cover. So anyway, not a fan. I've just got a couple more disappointing books to talk about, and the next one is Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. This is a book that I picked up for the debut novel category of the Goodreads Choice Awards, and it just wasn't it. I think this was billed as a sapphic romance, and I had it in my head that involved time travelling. I have no idea where I got that from. But yeah, it was billed as being a sapphic romance, and whilst it is sapphic, it's a lot more about someone that's struggling with their mental health, and them getting help. I don't know, I didn't particularly like the mental health rep in this book, and it's very difficult to judge like mental health rep because often it's coming from a place of personal experience, but I did not like what it did. I especially didn't like that one of the characters basically met their friend because they were working at a hospital where the friend was a patient, and that felt really uncomfortable and like boundaries were being crossed. I do wish I'd loved this more, but it just wasn't a hit for me. And the final disappointing book we've got on the list before we get into the real tea of my worst books of the year. Before we get into the tea of my worst books of the year is White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson. See, this is the thing. I was so bothered by the constant talk of bedbugs in this story that I couldn't even tell you if I actually disliked the story. I did think the ending left a lot to be desired. I think this book didn't compare to Tiffany D. Jackson's other work. But, you know, I think it did something. It just didn't do it for me. It was billed as Get Out versus The Haunting of Hill House. I've seen one of those. I haven't seen the other. I was looking for something horror, possibly ghostly. And it was social commentary, which I definitely don't like. But it was largely the bedbugs and just how uncomfortable it made me, and not in a good way. Like, books can make you uncomfortable and it can add to the experience, but this actually felt like it was negatively impacting my life. And now we are into my worst books of the year, and I've just checked and I've actually included the 5 very worst books. Some of them I have more definitive feelings on than others, but we'll start off with what may be the most controversial. And we have Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. What on earth is this book? Why is it so long? I don't think anything even happened in this story, but I think the nail in the coffin for me was the appropriative descriptions. So here's the thing. There's a point where a character is described as having a mask that has a red handprint right there. And in my mind, I immediately go to missing and murdered women and girls. And from the research I've done, and maybe my research wasn't exhaustive enough, that is what that symbol symbolizes. But that is not what is used in the book. It's just used as Kristoff going like, oh, that's a quite nice symbol, I'll just do that. And it just didn't do it for me. But mostly, it was dull as dishwater. I was not interested at all, wanted it over and done with. And I think part of what negatively impacted my experience of it was that everyone was raving about it, and I just can't see it. And as I said at the top of this video, please do come in the comments and tell me why this is your favourite book of the year, but it did absolutely nothing for me. The next book we've got is The Violent Season by, I want to say Sara Walters. Apologies if that's incorrect. This book was billed as every October the teenagers of the town go on a kind of murderous rampage, which sounds really interesting, sounds like a really cool concept, but it didn't really give you any of that. But what put it right at the bottom of my books for the year was the fact that it had a very, very, very long scene where someone's partner attempts to rape them. And it went on for pages and pages and pages. And I was like, this is wholly unnecessary. Like, you could have this character do all manner of things, but you decide to do pages and pages of traumatic stuff to have your character reach the realization that their partner's no good for them. It was too much. The next book perhaps is another controversial one. We've got The Cousins by Karen M. McManus. I just didn't feel very engaged with it. I felt like it tried, but it didn't give me enough information for me to kind of have clues about what was going on. I also thought it was really weird, mild spoiler, that these people who think they are cousins are like talking about being attracted to each other. And I was like, do we need the incesty vibes? I don't think so. So, wasn't one that I enjoy, and straight on the unhaul pile. The second worst book of the year was The Wicked Boy. It's a true crime story of a young boy who murdered his mother, I think, in Victorian times, which sounded really interesting. I do like a bit of true crime, but it tried to be really balanced and give a really whole story of this boy's life. And then you've got like him in prison or reformative school or something like that. And then it goes on and talks about the war. I don't know which war, but there's discussions of him being at war. So it was a very weird story, and it wasn't what I was expecting. And, you know, I'm allowed to rate things how I like. So I decided I was going to rate it a 0.25 because I had zero enjoyment of it. It did not interest me in the slightest. And I have no desire to ever read it again. And then the very worst book that I read last year, and this is the book that if you tell me you like it, I will judge you, is Sundered by Shannon. Why would I not like it? Because it had a 14-year-old as a love interest for a guy in his late 20s. And not only that, but she's acting provocatively around him to try and seduce him. So, no. What on earth are you talking about? Why was this even published? This needs to go in the bin. This needs to be burned from history. This needs to be burned from my mind. Oh, so mad. And that's completely ignoring the fact that the whole concept revolves around a vaccine that can make people skinny and stop people being fat. Like, what on earth is going on with this book? Are you trying to be problematic? And on that ragey note, thank you for watching. Please do leave a like, comment your thoughts on these books, and until tomorrow, bye!
There's a place